Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura and today I'm going to be talking about another thing I wish I had learned about a long time ago. I'm making these videos for anyone who wants to make their lives a little easier, kind of get their stuff together and get the basics down so they can focus on bigger things. Today I'm going to show you how I meal prep for variety on a budget. I really wish I had known about this when I was younger because I've spent so much money on unhealthy foods over the years, and this just would have made my life so much easier. I used to work in direct care for people with developmental disabilities, and anyone who's ever worked in direct care knows that the job comes with a lot of long hours due to staff shortages. I used to work 80+ hours a week, come in on my days off, go through meetings and trainings, and it left very little time and energy for cooking. With very little time off and barely making above minimum wage, I felt like fast food was my only option. At the time, I thought meal prepping was just making one really healthy meal, portioning it out into containers labeled with the days of the week, and then eating that meal every single day until you never want to eat that meal again. Fast forward to a few years later when I moved in with my fiance. He was working really crazy hours at the time and my schedule was a bit more open. A few times a week I would make a meal for the two of us. We would usually have some leftovers and then they would sit in the fridge and never get eaten. One day I was going through our Tupperware cabinet and tossing out anything that was cracked, stained, warped, basically all my Tupperware. I went online to start looking at Tupperware that would last a little bit longer and ended up looking at glass food storage containers. I stumbled upon these Ello glass food storage containers and just really liked their colorful silicone sleeves. They are freezer, dishwasher, microwave, and oven safe, and I've used them in all four with no problems. They're super easy to clean. I've never had any issues with cracking, breaking, staining, anything like that. They are a bit on the pricey side though. I got mine at Target.com and it was $40 for 5 of the 3.4 cup containers with lids. Just to give you an idea of how big these containers are though, and you'll see this in just a little bit, I can fit about 3 generous sized meals in these. I should also mention I'm not affiliated or sponsored by them, they're just really awesome containers. Anyway, I started storing our leftovers in these containers, and instead of putting them in the fridge, I put them in the freezer so that we could take them out when we were actually in the mood to have them, not just because they were going to go bad if we didn't. That was when I got the idea to make a family-sized meal and just store the entire thing. I got up early, went to the store, bought all the ingredients, made a huge batch of spaghetti, and then stored the entire thing in the freezer other than 2 plates that we had that night. Over the next couple weeks, anytime we didn't feel like cooking, I would just grab a couple containers out of the freezer, throw them in the microwave, and then 10 minutes later we were eating a homemade meal. I ended up buying 2 more sets of these containers over the next year and started experimenting with different recipes to add some variety to our meals. What I ended up doing was making a list of all of our favorite meals. I focused on comfort foods that we would easily choose over going out or ordering out after a long day. My list includes spaghetti, shepherd's pie, kielbasa, grilled chicken, grilled steak, veggie lasagna, a whole bunch of others. There are definitely way healthier options out there, but my main focus was just to have a healthier option than fast food or takeout when we were really hungry midweek and didn't feel like cooking a big meal. I also like to focus on making smaller portions so that I can use some of the same ingredients to make at least 1 or 2 other dishes as well. This is really the key to saving money and adding variety to your meal prep. For example, in the spaghetti sauce that I make, I need a ½ pound of ground beef and a ½ pound of ground pork. Since the grocery store sells them in 1-pound portions, I look through my list to see what other options I have to use that for. I can use that same combination for spaghetti and meatballs, shepherd's pie, or meatloaf. In doing it this way, I can prep a variety of ingredients for different meals at the same time, saving time, creating fewer dishes, and saving money because again, we're not ordering out. We're also spending less on groceries that we don't need and wasting less of the food that we do buy. This is definitely enough information to get started on your own, but if you want some extra inspiration, a few tips on making the whole process a little quicker and easier, and to see how I made over 16 meals in just over 2.5 hours for less than $30, then stick around. So today I'm going to be making my top 3 go-to meals: spaghetti and meat sauce, shepherd's pie, and kielbasa with mashed potatoes. For the spaghetti sauce, I used angel hair pasta, ground beef and ground pork, salt, pepper, dried Italian herbs, Prego 3 cheese sauce. I have a recipe for a great sauce that I make on special occasions, but when I'm meal prepping, I'm focused solely on what's quick and easy. I also use Kraft Parmesan cheese because it's cheap and I'm not picky. I was also going to use this red onion and the garlic that I just bought the day before shooting this, but they had both gone bad already, so I ended up just using some minced garlic I had in the fridge and some diced onion I had in the freezer instead. That's actually one of my first tips for meal prepping. When you only need to use half an onion or pepper or a clove of garlic or something, cut up the entire thing and just freeze what you don't use. It only takes a little bit longer and it saves you some time on another day. It also cuts down on food waste because if you're anything like me, there's a good chance the rest of that onion will go bad before you use it again. For the shepherd's pie, I used half the ground beef/pork mixture, some frozen peas, carrots, and corn, and a can of brown gravy with onions. For the mashed potatoes I used on the shepherd's pie and with the kielbasa, I used about 5 pounds of russet potatoes, but you can use whatever ones you prefer. I added unsalted butter, sour cream, Parmesan cheese, salt, pepper, and some scallions I pulled from our garden. For the shepherd's pie, I also added a light layer of cheddar cheese on top to make it extra unhealthy. Also, I forgot to add it here, but I also use whole milk in the potatoes too. The kielbasa sauce I make is literally just equal parts ketchup, barbecue sauce, and grape jelly. With all of these recipes I'm making today, you can obviously change up the ingredients to suit your personal preferences. Most of the stuff I used is either a brand I really like or it was just on sale, so feel free to use what you like and make it your own. I'll also link a few vegetarian recipes in the description box below for anyone looking for some good meat-free meal prep options. So the first thing I did was wash all the potatoes. The potatoes take the longest out of pretty much all of this, so I definitely wanted to get them started as soon as possible. You can peel them if you want, but I prefer them mashed with the peels. I'm also double checking them for any green color, as this will make you really sick. I just picked these up the day before, but as I talked about with the garlic and onion, it doesn't necessarily mean they're fresh. Luckily, these were all in good shape. After they were all washed, I diced the potatoes into about 1-inch cubes. I didn't get out a measuring tape or anything, I just cut them in smaller, relatively equal-sized pieces like this. I cut them down this small so they'd cook quickly and evenly, especially where I'm cooking such a large batch all at once. I'm obviously no professional chef, so I'm sure if any are watching, they're cringing pretty hard at my knife skills right now. But I do what I can with what I've got, and they still taste like potatoes at the end, so. Once they were all cut up, I threw them in an 8.6 quart stock pot with a boiler basket and filled them with water until the potatoes were just covered. After the pot was filled, I quickly chopped the scallion greens and peeled the garlic, which is probably my least favorite thing ever. Honestly, if anyone has any tricks to peeling garlic quicker, please let me know in the comments below. Also, just a quick side note, all the parts of the garlic and scallions I didn't use, I tossed into a gallon bag in the freezer, along with the parts of vegetables I didn't use in other recipes. Once that bag is full, I make a really good veggie stock that I freeze and use to make chicken or beef stocks, bone broths, or just for a quick, easy soup, sauce, or gravy. Here I'm just adding some salt and the cloves of garlic to the potatoes and turning the burner on high. Once it started boiling, I turned it down to medium and let them boil until they were soft enough to stick a fork in. After the potatoes started boiling, I preheated a large skillet, added the ground beef, pork, and chopped onions all at the same time. Once the meat was completely brown and mostly broken up, I added some minced garlic. Add as much or as little as you like, it's really personal preference. Once I can start to smell the garlic, it's pretty much done. It's going in the oven for like 45 minutes anyway, so it really doesn't have to be completely cooked just yet. I drained the fat from the pan into a bowl and let it cool before adding it to a Ziploc bag and throwing it away. You could save the fat for cooking in the future, but I just don't have any room at the moment with everything else I save. I lightly season the meat with salt and pepper because I'm going to be adding gravy to it for the shepherd's pie and spaghetti sauce to it for the pasta, so it really doesn't need a whole lot of extra seasoning. I scoop a little bit of the ground meat into the bottom of 2 Elo containers I had set aside for the shepherd's pie. I add the frozen peas, carrots, and corn, and the entire can of gravy on top. I know this seems excessive, but the extra gravy adds a ton of flavor and moisture to the veggies and meat, especially where it's going in the oven and being reheated in the microwave when it's ready to eat. Also, where each container will end up holding 3 meals, you're really only getting like 3 tablespoons per meal. Once the gravy is on, I put the containers and the leftover ground meat in the fridge to cool until the pasta is done and preheat the oven to 375 while I wait for the potatoes to finish cooking. Then I add water to a large pot for my pasta and set it to high heat to get it to a quick boil. Once the water started boiling, I added some salt and the entire 16-ounce package of pasta. Since angel hair doesn't take long at all, it was done in just a few minutes. You can usually tell just stirring it, but I like to test the pasta by grabbing a strand, snapping it, and listening for any noise that might indicate it's not quite done. Once the pasta is done, I drain it, leaving just a little bit of water in the pot. This is another part where the professional chefs might freak out a little bit. You're supposed to add the extra water to the sauce, but I just leave it in with the pasta, and I really haven't noticed any difference doing it this way. I very quickly add the ground meat mixture to the pasta. When I add the sauce, I scrape out what I can with a spatula, add a tiny bit of water to the jar, shake it, pour it out, and repeat until the jar is clean. The extra water really helps hydrate the dried Italian herbs I add and helps save me the step of cleaning out the jar after. I add a little bit more salt and pepper, then stir until everything's evenly mixed. This recipe makes about 7 large portions of spaghetti. I personally like to make them large portions because my fiance likes to grab these for work, and when he's gone for 10 to 12 hours and only gets one meal, I like to make sure it's on the larger side. On his days off, we usually grab one to split between the two of us for lunch, since we usually don't eat a big lunch. So I count these as 7 meals, but it really ends up being more. I fork test the potatoes and garlic to make sure they're both done before shutting off the burner and draining the potatoes. I drain the potato water completely and set it back on the burner I just shut off to get rid of the extra moisture. This is huge for the potatoes I make. I don't want any water left in the potatoes when I add the rest of the ingredients. I add 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 1 tablespoon at a time so it melts faster. Then I add in a cup of whole milk and 2 large scoops of sour cream. I mash the ingredients in a bit, mix it around, and mash it again to make sure the garlic is mixed in well. Then I add salt, pepper, and a little Parmesan cheese. Mix it in, mash it one more time, and mix it one more time, just to be sure the mixture is evenly seasoned. Once the potatoes are done, I take the shepherd's pies out of the fridge and add the mashed potatoes on top. I sprinkle on a layer of cheddar cheese and put it in the oven until the cheese melts and starts to brown. Our oven isn't working right, so this took almost an hour. I portioned out some of the remaining mashed potatoes into 3 yellow containers, since I know that's how many meals I'll get from the kielbasa. I scooped the leftover mashed potatoes into a muffin tin, which is my next tip for meal prepping. I put these in the freezer overnight, take them out in the morning, let them thaw out a little, and then use a butter knife to remove them from the tin. Then I put them in a gallon freezer bag and throw them back in the freezer. I also use this method when I prep with rice because the muffin tin makes the perfect size for a small side dish. Then the next time I meal prep, or if I just feel like making a meal midweek, all I have to do is cook the main dish, take 1 or 2 of these out of the freezer, add some veggies, and I have a super quick meal ready to go in minutes. Next, I quickly washed out the skillet I used for the ground meat and put it on the stove over medium-high heat while I cut up the kielbasa. I didn't add any oil to the pan because I feel like beef kielbasa really doesn't need any extra fat to cook. While the kielbasa sauteed, I quickly mixed the sauce together in a bowl. I don't measure anything, I just kind of eyeball it and it always turns out good. Again, it's just equal parts barbecue, ketchup, and grape jelly. You really don't have to mix it well either because it'll all melt together in the skillet anyway. I had already shut off the burner as soon as I added the sauce, so I just let the kielbasa simmer for a little bit in the heat of the pan. By this time, the shepherd's pies were finally done, so I took them out to cool for a bit. As everything cooled to room temperature, I added frozen peas and carrots with a little minced garlic, salt and pepper to the containers with mashed potatoes and added the kielbasa right after. I also topped off the shepherd's pies and the mashed potatoes with the scallions I cut up earlier to finish off the meals. And that's it. I got at least 7 meals of spaghetti, 3 meals of kielbasa with mashed potatoes and veggies, and 6 meals of shepherd's pie. What we do with the shepherd's pie is we heat up the entire container until the center is at least 165 degrees. Portion out a couple plates, and then let the rest cool to room temperature and throw it in the fridge to reheat later. You're technically not supposed to reheat leftovers more than once, so I don't recommend it, but as long as the meal doesn't have rice in it, we take our chances and just make sure it's out of the temperature danger zone by 20 degrees. Also, you probably already know this, but make sure you let your food cool down to room temperature before adding it to the fridge. Leave it in the fridge overnight so it'll cool even more, then add it to the freezer. Not only will this prevent cracking or breaking of your glass containers, but it'll also prevent your fridge or freezer from heating up and spoiling your food. Also, just a heads up, this is what I had for dishes after. Normally I wash dishes while I meal prep, but I wanted to show you every part of it, both the good and the bad. On the bright side, I barely have any dishes to do for the rest of the week, and this only took me about 20 minutes. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and I'll make more like this in the future.